Always love hearing about a project that comes in under budget when federal dollars are involved. So no pressure. We'll be looking to keep that record up. I want to acknowledge everybody who's gathered here. I had a great opportunity already to meet the state officials who are here. When you have state leadership, state representatives and senators who understand the importance of infrastructure, that enables us to be better partners at the federal levels. Thank you, Mayor, for the warm welcome, to the local leaders from the city and the county who are here, representatives of the federal delegation, and I also want to acknowledge the union labor involved in helping to actually build this structure. It's really an extraordinary piece of work. I want to go out of my way to acknowledge your federal delegation, in particular Senator Tester, because he was not just somebody who advocated very proactively for this project and other projects benefiting the region, but he's one of the reasons why we have this bipartisan infrastructure law in the first place. None of the projects, this and the others we're celebrating, would be possible if it weren't for leaders willing to work across the aisle, like John Tester, who knew that there was an opportunity to have Democrats and Republicans sitting side by side who didn't agree on everything, maybe didn't agree on much, but agreed on the importance of making sure we had the right kind of funding to do this work. So I'm thrilled to be here. I've been on the ground for about an hour, and I already love the vibe here in Missoula. It's a place that reminds me of home. We're a little flatter where I grew up, but having been the mayor of a city of 100,000 people that knew our airport was a key hub for our economy and our region, I know how much it means to have the right kind of service. And I also know what you're up against when you have that legacy infrastructure that you've inherited and are trying to make work and maybe stretch much longer than what was originally envisioned. One of the, Washington, D.C. is a mixed bag, but one of the pleasures of being there is a lot of great places to take your kids. At home on a rainy day, my instinct usually is to take our kids to Target. But in Washington on a rainy day, I can take them to the Smithsonian. And so on Saturday, I did just that, took my son to the Air and Space Museum and had a look around. And, or as he calls it, the Rocket Ship Museum. He's about 2.5 years old. And there were some rocket ships, but there was also a lot from the early history of U.S. aviation. And it's astonishing when you look at the aircraft and everything that went with them, from the airmail days of the 30s and 40s that really led to the airport network that we know today, to see how much has changed. And yet it was then that the funds for this airport were established. I believe it dates back to FDR approving New Deal funds that would go into this airport in 1938. Tim tells me that the terminal buildings that were replaced date back to 1948. Of course, you've had upgrades, you've had expansions since then, but nowhere near the scale that this community has grown, and nowhere near the pace of change in the way that people travel today. In fact, the waiting areas were built at a time when the planes that would serve a market like this typically held just a few dozen passengers, not about 100, like many of the ones that you would see out the window right now. So I know that created real challenges for Western Montana, not just from a user experience perspective, but really from a regional economy perspective. Lots of people want to come here for reasons I now understand even better looking out your window. And yet there wasn't the kind of room you would want to get passengers and flights in or out, which then meant that you would have more expensive flights, because you get to a dynamic where you have people competing for seats more than you have airlines competing for customers. A lot of residents have talked about how it was prohibitive to fly in and out of their own community because of the limited number of flights and the costs that go along with that. By the latest numbers I've seen, almost 1 million passengers move through this airport in a given year now, which, for perspective, is about double the population of the entire state at the time that the airport was built. So it's clear that there has been a need for growth, for expansion, and leaders gathered here and others, and your senator had a vision to fix that. And we're proud to support that vision. And we're delighted to see that phase 1 of this new terminal opened in 2022 ahead of the budget and on schedule, and a ton of credit is deserved for that. And what I've seen is, since then, You have already expanded flights, attracted 2 new airlines, which are adding seats, which creates more competition, which will help drive ticket prices lower than they would be otherwise. And now, as I've had the opportunity to see and as we're surrounded by right here, work is continuing on phase 2 to make sure that this airport creates a great experience and affordable ways for residents to travel in and out now and well into the future. So that's why, on behalf of the Department of Transportation and the whole administration, we were so proud to support the modernization of this airport with over $41 million and counting since 2021. And we are thrilled to be here to celebrate work on the phase 2 that's underway right now. They wrote me an escalator joke and I just can't do it. But I'll say I'm very impressed to know that federal transportation funds are responsible for Missoula, what I'm told is Missoula's only escalator, and I'm told the only other one in the region is the one in Kalispell, also at the airport. So you know we're getting people aloft in more ways than one. I'll just put it that way. And I also love an airport that feels like you're somewhere in particular, and I can tell that you have that character, those attributes woven into the nature of this facility. And it's not just the airport. In East Missoula, we awarded $24 million to transform a section of Highway 200 from a thoroughfare that bisects the community into a main street that unites it. Makes it safer for people to walk or bike to and from East Missoula. Last year, we awarded almost $25 million to make it safer and more pleasant to drive, walk, bike, or roll along Front Street, Main Street, Higgins Avenue, and the Riverfront Trail. And just a few months ago, we announced funds to help replace the Lolo Street Bridge with a new bridge that has better drainage, less risk of flooding, and includes a path for people to walk or bike, meaning that this important route, which is important not just to people who use it every day, but also can be an emergency evacuation route, is open even when subject to extreme weather. All told, we have announced over $2.4 billion to modernize transportation across Montana. It's a level of financial support from the federal government that we haven't seen in my lifetime, and it's sorely needed. The decades-long mismatch between the growth and change in our communities over time, on one hand, and the lack of federal infrastructure investment, on the other hand, is something that was felt all across the country. But in these last years, that is changing. We now count over 50,000 infrastructure projects moving forward across America through the bipartisan infrastructure law that President Biden signed, and again, one that was crafted, negotiated, and delivered in large part thanks to the leadership of Senator Tester. And the benefits are not just felt by communities after the new bridge opens or after you cut the ribbon on the new terminal or after a train line gets going, but they're being felt in the jobs created to deliver those projects. The work that we see and hear going on right now is already putting presents under the tree, a new car or truck in the driveway, a new opportunity to own a home or educate your kids for so many workers here. Matter of fact, in September, the number of total construction jobs in America hit 8 million for the first time, and every month since then, we've had a new record. And again, we saw that here at this airport, creating not just jobs, but a lot of good union jobs that can change the trajectory of a family. So we're thrilled to be partnering with you in this work. FDR had the New Deal. I call this infrastructure package the big deal, because it is a big deal. And whatever you call, we're seeing it here and across the country, and I think it recalls the best in the American tradition, which is having big visions and big aspirations and then going after how to get them done. The only other thing I want to mention that I think is especially important in terms of the dynamic between the local leaders and the state leaders we've engaged here today and what we're doing back in Washington is what all of those 51,000 projects we're funding have in common. Not one of them was invented, dreamed up, or drawn out in the US DOT headquarters in Navy Yard in Washington, D.C. Every one of them was a vision that came forward from the community. And that's how it ought to be. Our approach has been that the ideas shouldn't all come from Washington, but more the funding should. And now, at last, it is. And we're delighted to partner with you on this and many other great projects. So congratulations on everything that's been achieved here. We're looking forward to hearing about what you are going to deliver as this and other projects get done. And you in Missoula and Western Montana have a lot to celebrate. We're glad to celebrate with you. Thanks so much for welcoming us.